For 2022, the Subaru Forester was refreshed, and while the regular models did see some minor updates and changes, the biggest news is the addition of this cartoony yet rugged wilderness trim. So today I'm going to go in depth on exactly what you get with the Wilderness, and I'll also tell you why this is my personal favorite Forester since the 2000s, so stick around. If you enjoy reviews on interesting cars in every budget, whether it's new or used, consider subscribing to the channel and hitting the bell. That way I can make this my long-term career and you get high-quality automotive content. Thank you. Now back to the video. So this review is going to be Wilderness specific. I'll release a 2022 Forester review as soon as I can get my hands on the regular Forester. However, there are so many changes to the Wilderness that it's really not going to drive the same as the regular Forester, and I'll get into that in my driving portion later in this video. Up front, all Foresters of this year will have steering responsive LED headlights. It's been like that for a couple years. However, the Wilderness adds standard LED fog lights down there that are more powerful than the regular units. Now, usually I don't talk too much about looks in my reviews. However, something needs to be said. In person, and on camera too, this thing looks like it's from a video game. The front bumper is just shaped in a peculiar way, and they did this to enhance the approach angle, which is 23 degrees. It's better than what you would find in the Outback Wilderness, but it's still pretty far behind things like the Bronco Sport Badlands and Cherokee and Compass Trailhawk. Still, I think it looks cool, and the fact that it's unpainted should also help if you were to bash it. You don't need to try to color match it when replacing it. I'm just hoping that it doesn't fade too bad over time. You will also have a front camera, which is really helpful, not only for off-roading, but mainly for parking. And that's standard on all Wilderness trims, which we should discuss. This starts at right around 33, 34 after destination, and if you get the optional package like this one has, you'll take it up to around 36. And that might bring up the question of how expensive is the Outback Wilderness? Well, it's about $4,000 more with a comparable package. Subaru also placed an emphasis on making it very easy to access the tow points. Up front, you'll see the little hatch there. They also added a light-duty skid plate to all Wilderness Foresters, but this skid plate offers more limited coverage than my health insurance. Truthfully, most buyers won't need additional protection. However, for those that do, Subaru proudly states that they provide an extended front skid plate along with fuel tank and rear diff underguards as genuine accessories. Real quick, I'd like to thank the friendly people over at Royal on the Eastside in Bloomington, Indiana for loaning me the Forester for today's review. If you're looking for a new Subaru and you don't want to overpay, check them out. When it comes to ground clearance, you're 9.2 inches versus the stock 8.7 inches, and you also have a hood decal, which Subaru says is to reduce glare. Around the side of the Wilderness trim, you're going to start to see more of this anodized copper. So you're going to see it on the roof rails, which are upgraded, and they can hold about 800 pounds of static load and then 200 pounds of dynamic load, or as Subaru says, enough for a 3-person rooftop tent. Now this is based off of an upgraded premium trim model Forester, so you're going to have proximity unlock and lock. All Wilderness Foresters will look the same and will come with these sick 17-inch matte black looking wheels. Definitely gives it a little bit more sidewall, although these could use larger tires. They're really a very mild all-terrain. Of course, Subaru was trying to mitigate some of the gas mileage hit that they knew they were going to get with building a model like this. Really, that's the largest downside to picking a Forester Wilderness. You're gonna go from 33 miles to the gallon on the highway to 28. City only drops about 1. I mean, it still gets 25 in the city and 28 on the highway. Those are not really terrible numbers by any means. The increased ride height is to blame too. It has more ground clearance than a Bronco Badlands or Cherokee Trailhawk, and it's less than a ½ inch away from the Toyota 4Runner, which was partially caused by the new springs and shocks that changed the driving characteristics of the Wilderness. The ride height also improves the breakover and departure numbers, which were already impressive. Around back, this looks pretty identical to the regular model, minus the black badging, Wilderness emblem, and the unpainted black plastic on the tailgate that matches the mirrors. The look of these and the increased side moldings might make this look like a toy, but I'd take this over scratches on the precious paint. Speaking of which, the Wilderness exclusive Geyser Blue is my personal favorite Subaru color at the moment. And while there are plenty of aftermarket accessories to make your regular Forester into something like this or more capable than this, Subaru made powertrain tweaks here that you can't really do yourself, and you don't have to worry about accelerated wear of other items that were not designed to, take larger wheels or a beefier suspension that's lifted, and there's no concern over aftermarket modifications hurting your factory warranty if something were to go wrong. Now, one thing that I'm curious about for Subaru fans out there, what do you think about the styling? Share your thoughts in the comment section. So far on the outside, we've seen some pretty tasteful modifications from Subaru. And on the inside, Subaru made some great changes to adapt the Forester to this new persona. Now, the difference mainly comes from the seats. They are Subaru's StarTex. It's like a vegan leather alternative, but it's supposed to be water and weather resistant. And it feels not only durable, but it's very plush to the touch. And they all come with power adjustable lumbar as well. It's just comfortable and supportive. And there is, some soft touch areas where your knees will rest. You're gonna have the anodized copper placed here on the shifter and the steering wheel, along with copper stitching all throughout the vehicle. And really the badging here is kind of wild. They have some on the exterior of the vehicle. However, whenever you turn on the car, it says, Subaru Wilderness, a little animation plays. There's Subaru Wilderness on the tachometer. There's Subaru Wilderness tags placed throughout the vehicle. There's a little stamping. Fit and finish in here is pretty good. I like the varied textures of everything. You have a simple, not flashy UI here. I think it works better for this rugged vehicle than the big 11.6-inch screen in the Outback Wilderness. The 8-inch screen here is very easy to navigate, not the most snappy out there, but it's simple and has a reasonably good resolution to it. Plus, if you like an analog gauge cluster, you'll be happy with the layout here. Like I said earlier, this isn't a full Forester review, so I'm not going to climb throughout every crevice of the Forester. Just subscribe for that review, which will be coming as soon as I can get it out. When it comes to features, this is based on the premium trim. It's going to have heated seats. It's not going to have a heated steering wheel. You do have dual zone automatic climate control. Standard, you'll have a 6-speaker stereo system here. The other 2 bits in that upgrade package that I've mentioned is navigation and a Harman Kardon sound system that comes with a subwoofer in the back. And I definitely prefer the Harman Kardon here. However, I don't think it'll be a big disappointment if you have to stick with the 6 speakers. This just has more power and can handle higher volumes a bit better. And like every Forester other than the base, you will have a nice panoramic sunroof as standard. And something that I think is a Wilderness exclusive, this has a black headliner, which is great because it'll show less wear, less stains, and it kind of gives this just a slightly different ambiance. You're gonna have a ton of headroom in the front seat, you're gonna have a ton of headroom in the back seat, plenty of leg room. And while backseat passengers can't get heated rear seats with the Wilderness, they do get USB ports and rear vents. Unfortunately, none of these have cup holders that can fit a 40-ounce hydro flask, but you can fit a whole ton of shit. You're gonna have a really reasonable space here, just like all of the other Foresters. However, 2 additional features. One is only available on the Touring, and that is seat releases that can shoot down the back seats like I have here. The second thing, this has a very rugged, nice material on the back of the seats here. So if you have some really dirty items, it's not going to tear up the back seats. Which I think all SUVs should have. This almost makes the accessory rear seat back protectors of my Tester as unnecessary as half of the Too Fast, Too Furious script.
So forget about it, cuz.
Another big pro to the Wilderness is a full-size spare with that more aggressive tire as well. So far, I've kind of flooded you with information about what is different with the Forester Wilderness. But now, let's see how it all adds up on the road. Powering the new Forester Wilderness is the same 2.5-liter boxer engine. It's naturally aspirated, it's a 4-cylinder, it makes 182 horsepower and 176 pound-feet of torque. This was the source of some controversy here because people really wanted to see a turbocharged engine like what was in the Outback in this model. However, Subaru didn't just leave the wilderness high and dry with this powertrain. They actually tweaked the final drive ratio, so now instead of a 3.7 gearing, it has 4.1, which has definitely improved response here. Now, this is still a continuously variable transmission, but in addition to the aggressive gearing, there's an external oil cooler for the CVT and a more powerful cooling fan motor, allowing the Forester to tow 3,000 pounds, which is up from 1,500. If you want to feel cool or engine brake, there's an 8-speed manual mode in here versus the 7 in other Foresters. When it comes to 0 to 60, the regular Forester is nothing to write home about. Other outlets have gotten 8.5 seconds, but that seems optimistic compared to my real-world tests that have shown around 9. This wilderness feels more peppy than that, but let's have the numbers do the talking. Now for this test, I'm going to shut off traction control. I'm going to put it into its sport mode, SI drive, and then we're gonna boost this thing the old school Honda way and shut off the air conditioning. Off the line, it's definitely improved. Does kind of try to mimic some shifts there. It definitely has better tuning than what I've experienced with some Subarus in the past, like the Crosstrek. So we'll take this thing up to highway speeds. One, accelerating at this speed up a hill, not much of a problem. Still, this does feel on the slower end of the segment, but in a vehicle like this, I'm not really longing for more power, but if you're getting out of that Outback wilderness with the 2.4 turbo, you might be a little disappointed. Still, 8.7 seconds in the real world is not too shabby. This is noticeably more potent off the line and throttle response is good at any speed. If you can get past the occasional lurching at low speeds, this powertrain works just fine for the wilderness. The more off-road oriented suspension seems to improve on-road comfort as well, with one small cost. With these modifications, you might be concerned about steering, and I'm glad to report that it does not feel ponderous. However, it does feel just slightly less responsive, but maybe just a little bit more play there on center than the stock car. Now we'll take it on some windy, rougher roads and see how this new suspension handles. That was a really huge departure for the Forester Wilderness here. So you have different springs and dampeners to help with off-road use. I'm going to purposefully hit some larger bumps, and yeah, no, it handles it quite well. There's still a little bit more road noise in here than what is in the Outback, but I mean, this is quite comfortable. Subaru, despite adding a half an inch of a ground clearance and improving the suspension for off-road use, also tweaked the stabilizer bar and bushings to mitigate the added body roll from these modifications. I mean, it does still feel like it has a little bit more sway than I think the regular Forester does, but it's pretty minimal. Honestly, I think this is still at a phenomenal balance between, steering capability, body roll, and comfort. Like, I mean, going over this not super great back road, it's putting up no fight. The tires are really not loud at all, and I don't think the average Forester buyer is going to hop in here and notice that difference. What they do notice is that this thing rides really well. It's very comfortable. I almost want to say more comfortable than the regular one. It absorbs potholes and deteriorated roads with ease. The regular Forester was also quite comfortable, and I think that feels ever so slightly more controlled than this, but the Wilderness comes off a hair more forgiving. The steering is less precise. It doesn't wander, but it thinks about it. It is by no means insecure or sloppy, just a notch or two behind the competent regular Forester. Both feature numb steering racks and aren't really a joy to fling around a back road, so if you're looking for something like that, Mazda's new CX-50 might be more promising. Okay, so let's talk about off-road differences here. You will have Subaru's dual mode X mode as standard, which the sport trim and up have had this for a while. What X mode is it basically tries to maximize grip through mimicking a locking differential and trying to direct power to the wheels that really need it. This will work up to speeds of 25 miles per hour. In the past, it would shut off if you exceeded that, so even if your wheels were just spinning. Now, if you go above 25, it will just go into a standby mode. However, that function is now standard on all Foresters with X mode, unlike with the Subaru Outback. The one kicker with this one's X mode is that it can now use the true advantage of that gearing and keep it locked in the lowest gear ratio possible for the CVT. This is a wilderness exclusive. It will work on hill inclines at low speeds. In case you were wondering, the dirt snow mode for X mode limits wheel spin, whereas deep snow and mud maximizes wheel torque, shuts off traction control, and really lets you power through the rough stuff. To better assist with this and other things, Subaru has added an electric brake booster that improves braking pressure consistency and allows X mode to work more efficiently. My own senses tell me that the pedal feel is natural and responsive. When you add in that extra ground clearance with the improved departure, approach, and breakover angles, this becomes quite a capable package. And when you compare it to the Outback Wilderness, in a lot of ways, since it's got shorter overhangs and it's a shorter vehicle, you're going to have improved capability off-road. Plus, for 2022, they did add a few additional safety features like enhanced Subaru eyesight, which is interesting because the camera bump here is actually smaller than it was in previous models. It is different hardware to begin with, along with the new software. It allows it to have a better field of vision, and that also should help with the evasive steering assist that is now built into the autonomous braking. Now that is an available feature on the premium trim, and it's standard on the upper ones. Eyesight is standard on all Foresters, which includes that autonomous braking, adaptive cruise, and lane assist. This trim is the only way to have eyesight properly calibrated for a higher ride height. I don't know how I feel about the evasive steering feature yet, but I'm curious to see how it works in the wild. I just don't want to try it for myself. The Wilderness has blind spot monitoring and rear cross traffic standard too. Now let's talk about a scary Subaru topic, reliability. When the first gens of Lineatronic CVTs were being used in the Forester, it wasn't great. And oil consumption was also a problem. Head gaskets used to be as well until they changed the material. Oil consumption hasn't been an issue for this generation, and neither has transmissions since 2017, and that wasn't an overly abundant problem to begin with, but enough so to get Subaru's attention. The only issues I'm seeing through Consumer Reports or CarComplaints.com is with the electrical system having a parasitic draw, rear power gates losing programming or getting buggy, and issues with the Starlink infotainment. Nothing else seemed too consistent, and none of these seemed really that prevalent. If reliability is a top concern, I think the Forester Wilderness, especially with its more beefy transmission and cooling, should be better than average. Going into this, I was worried that Subaru was sacrificing the Forester's good handling traits to make it still meh off-road. But after research on its modifications and capabilities, driving it around town and trying it out for myself on some rough Midwestern roads, it proved me wrong. In fact, I like how this drives on road more than the regular Forester. I wish the steering was as direct as the regular car, but it can take the harshest of roads without sweating much at all. And the transmission gearing makes the Forester feel more alive than it did in the past. Add in quirky styling and the cool, rugged interior, and you have the Forester that the inner Subie bro in me always wanted. If you can take a slightly louder highway ride, worse gas mileage, and a little less precision behind the wheel, the Forester Wilderness is a knockout SUV. And if it's too slow for you, get the Outback. If you enjoyed the video, it would mean a lot if you liked, subscribed, and hit the bell. It all helps me with my success in the YouTube algorithm. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you in the next one. Now, for those of you who were paying close attention, in the beginning I said my favorite Forester in a long time. My favorite Forester obviously has to be the 2006-ish XT with the 5-speed manual. It's extremely rare and you pretty much never see them, but they did make them.